Hi, I'm Lance Hendricks and you're watching Bryan Lomax Movie Talk. Don't turn it off.
Hello there and welcome to my latest video in my Truly Independent series, where I review films that were made under a budget of £5 million and outside of the studio system. In this episode I'm going to be looking at the film For Love's Sake, which is a UK Christian film, and it was made for a budget of £33,000, written by Richard Brimblecombe and Andrew Walkington and directed by Andrew Walkington. For Walkington, this film is a semi-autobiographical film. It's based on actual events from his life, when he lost his father at a very early age and his mother kind of fell into a deep depression, and he ended up going through the social service system with his brothers. This film is ultimately about how his faith and the faith of his family, his Christian faith, kind of saved him and brought his family back together. Now, much of the events in this film and some of the characters as well have been changed, basically for the sake of narrative fluidity. Obviously you need to jettison certain things in order to make the narrative work better, but on the whole, this is based on real events. Now, I must say before I continue, for the sake of transparency, I did have some involvement in the making of this film. I did 3 days work on it, mainly as a production assistant, and I did a little bit of some of the performance in one scene at the end of the film, but that will not cloud my judgment, I assure you. First of all, as I said, this is a very small budget, £33,000, and that shows quite drastically in some parts. Most of the cast in this film are amateur actors. They're not professionally trained or anything, save for a few, such as Christopher Lee Power, Robert Purdy, and a few others. Those two actors in particular do a very good job. Robert Purdy is very good as the social worker who's trying to help this family. He brings quite a lot of warmth to the role, but particular standouts, given the fact that they are not professional actors, is their first roles are William Wenlock and Luke Foxall as the brothers James and Paul. They do a really excellent job here of conveying all the emotions that boys of that age would be going through, and all the experiences that they're dealing with going through the social services system and dealing with a mother who is very suicidal. James is quiet and soulful, struggling with questions about his emerging faith, particularly given his last words to his father shortly before his death. Paul, on the other hand, is angry and very destructive, bringing attention to the pain that he is feeling over the loss of his father. Now, as I say, these two young boys are newcomers. This is their first role, and I think given the performance we get from them, I think this is a testament to Walkington's skill as a director. He knows how to work with actors. He draws performances from them that sit just on the right side of sentiment. On the whole, the script is really very well written as well. Now, it does an awful lot for the actors. It's an actor's script. It gives them a lot to work with. However, there are some weak spots, and that primarily comes down to the comedy elements. There's a lot of comedy in this film that kind of shoehorned in, particularly from one character that, I don't know, I guess he's there to lighten the mood, and it just doesn't work. Bruce Marchiano also appears in this film. Now, for anyone who's a fan of Christian movies, you'll know that Bruce Marchiano is probably the guy who has played Jesus more times than any other actor. He brings the same kind of warmth to this role that he does with his performances as Jesus. I really like Bruce Marchiano. He has a very kind of trusting presence about him. You just want to trust this guy. While I like him as an actor, I do think that the casting is simply a bit of a stunt, I guess, to get his name onto the credits in order to draw that Christian movie-going crowd in. Because Marchiano is American, he does kind of stick out like a sore thumb. The main strength of this film for me is that you never feel like you're being preached to, except for maybe a couple of scenes that are set in a church when you are literally being preached to because there's a vicar at the front. But on the whole, unlike a lot of the American counterparts, films such as God's Not Dead and whatnot, Walkington handles this material in such a way that it's more of a parable than a preaching session, and that's what I really love about this film. It explores faith, it explores faith from the eyes of people who live it, and leaves you to make your own decision, I guess. One thing that's also worth pointing out about this film is that you have to remember it's set 35 years ago, and the social services system back then was very different. Nothing like the system we have today. So if it feels a little bit harsh sometimes on the social services, then really take that into account. On the whole, For Love's Sake is a really good film about faith, as seen through the eyes of a child, and it does a very good job of not shying away from the harsh realities of life, but without throwing a load of sex and violence at you. I give For Love's Sake a 7.5 out of 10. Now, if you've seen the film, please comment below and let me know what you thought about it. Also, let me know, have you seen any other films that were made for around the £30,000 mark? If so, let me know what they are, and maybe down the line I'll get to them and review them too. Until next time, thanks for watching.